Welcome to episode 6 of Ascension in the Raw. My name is Marissa Indigo. So grateful to be here with the lovely Annette Shaner of the Art of Intuition. So, hi, everybody, and welcome. We have a special episode today. Pretty amazing time as well to be together. Here we are in the in-betweens, the ultimate in-betweens, the eclipse sandwich. So we're right in between the eclipses today with all of this. And today also marks a pretty special cosmic event yet again, right? We have gateways upon gateways here. We are on the very last day of the old era in the linear calendar here. So the sun is at 29 degrees of Pisces. We are getting ready for the official solar new year tomorrow. And what's really neat is today, this is the first time this has happened in 150 years, where both planets, the sun and the planet Neptune, are both together in an alignment, a very special alignment today with the 29 degrees of Pisces mark. Very, very cool. So it's a perfect day for this topic. Going back and forth this week, what would be good for everyone? What would be supportive? How about talking about connections and connecting with our guidance and how this shifts over time, how it can get progressively seemingly more complicated sometimes also, or not as easy, not as effortless. Um, and we'll get into that. So thank you and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here with us. And I would love to pass it to you, Annette, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had one of the cats was trying to get in and he went right under this. I have a loft in here. I built a loft for in here and he just went right under there and got on his bed. He's like, "You're right, Marissa. It is an exhausting time. I'm gonna go take a nap. I can't even anymore." It's so funny. Yeah, I think today's gonna be a really good topic. It's funny, anytime you mention anything new as far as astrology that hasn't happened for a long time, it's always interesting to go back, even though technically we're always in different timelines. Technically, that collective that experienced the timeline 150 years ago is different than the collectives now. In some way, it's because we really don't have the past, present, future timeline. I kind of look at it as just different frequencies, different timelines. But if you look back at what was happening, even in the collectives back in that time, which we would have been in the 1880s or something around that time, because it's interesting because around when we had the whole 2016 stuff with the elections and everything that happened in 2016, the astrology there had to do more with a revolution. And the astrology had not been like that since the American Revolution. And it was something, I think it was Pluto. It was like 250 years before, something to that effect. I can't remember. But it was kind of interesting to go back, even though you don't ever want to think about it like it's our past. It is a different frequency where the collectives were experiencing similar astrology to see what was going on then in that time, how it was affecting that collective. Because technically it's still happening all simultaneously anyway. So I don't want anyone to get too bogged down when I will reference the past, because to me, it's just a different frequency and just how those collectives responded to the same astrology. I think it's interesting to give you an idea of how we're responding to the same astrology, even though we're talking about so many years. Everyone wants to always put it linear because that's how our brain wants to put it in some kind of frame, right? Even though everything happens at the same time, everything's happening at the same time. We're in different places all throughout multidimensional, reality. So anyway, I'm really excited to talk about the topic, and I just wanted to kind of throw that in. And I remembered that because I had my chart read years ago, and I think it was like 2017, and I went to this retreat where there was an astrologer there, and he was talking about this, and he brought up astrology and how everything was so lined up how it did in the American Revolution. And you see a lot of that, still that energy playing out now. It's just a different type of revolution. So it's just interesting to look at that. If you want to go back and look at 150 years ago in this current timeline, none of our current existences we're going to be able to compare. But when you even hear people talk about astrology 5 or 10 years ago, what were you doing then? When these planets were similar before. Yes, you're in a zillion different timelines later, and yes, you're in a lot different frequencies later, but you might be experiencing it in a different way. You might have a totally flip of it, depending on just where you are in your frequency. But it's always a good way to experience it and kind of bring it home for you. And when I look back, I've done a lot of talks about different historical time periods and how the collectives, you can see how collectives, I don't want to say died out, but in a sense, it's what happens with a lot. Some people leave the collective. Whether now a lot of us now consciously leave the collective and go build another collective. That's how the collectives will kind of fade out. But back in different frequencies and different timelines, people just died out of those collectives and things went a different direction. And you could see, even if you go back in any historical event, how there were so many chances to align these realities. So many things could happen to align things, and the collective just never really could do it. And then something catastrophic had to happen to shake everything up. A lot of times it was a war to shake everything and get it in a different direction, to align it, to kind of self-correct the timeline. So, all right, I'm going to start it, get back to you so we can get a little bit more on topic. I kind of took us a little bit off topic.
That's great. Thank you, Annette. And so today, I felt like it would be really supportive to talk about connecting to and hearing our guidance. And just to kick it off, this shifts throughout our life. So I'll just share a little bit of my own experience. Like stuff that was not super critical to know was always easier to know. And so that seems to be the same, even when your connection shifts with how or what. So one of the key pieces is to balance yourself, to come into a state of neutrality where you're not hooked on, dependent on, concerned, emotionally invested in the answer. And depending on your situation and what's going on, right, and how important it can feel, that's the challenge. So I just wanted to start with that no matter where you are on the awakening journey, on the spiritual journey, or the ascension journey, the first piece is to come into a place of neutrality and not feeling separated from that which you wish to know, which is a whole challenge in itself. So, as far back as I can remember, when it comes to connecting with the divine, connecting with inner guidance, I remember being really little and receiving information and feedback from like the elements, like the wind or just the devas in nature. Growing up in Hawaii and like being outside in the jungles and things like that. But I mean, at that time, I was a child. I wasn't actively asking, actively seeking feedback or information. So as time went on and I was in my young adult years, oracle cards were huge because then you would have more serious crossroads and things you're delving into, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? At that time, I wasn't sure how I was going to support my daughter. And it was funny because no matter how many of the different decks that I used, I would get the same answer, but it wasn't really enough information, right? So then you're kind of like, keep trying and keep trying your decks, like, can you give me more information because you're fearful, So I think it's always good to share the very beginnings all the way to like more advanced. Where I am now is I am my guidance. My universal connection is my guidance. But if I'm not in the frequency to receive that, then I have to do the work to get into the alignment in order to hear. And so that's why I feel like it's important to share that divine neutrality piece and, not being concerned or having emotional charge around needing to know, which is such a huge part of the human condition, but that neutrality to be open to receive, and to put down the thing that you're not yet getting information about, like put it down like you don't care about it, come into that neutrality, and the information will come through the crack of least resistance, but I'd love to pass it to you, Annette, to just wherever you want to go with this.
I think it's interesting when you talk about when you were younger and how you're not really looking, for guidance. And we were born, we don't usually get into linear age, but we were born, I'm assuming we're born in different generations. Like I grew up and I don't remember any of tarot and none of that kind of stuff. I do remember younger being into crystals and things like that. I did like that kind of stuff. Um, but there wasn't the spirituality community. I always, there's a country song called in 1980 something, and that's about, I think that guy was born about the same year I was, or the exact same year the guy that wrote that song. Because so every time I hear that song, I'm like, yeah, that was like my childhood, right? Watching the Dukes of Hazzard. So it was a little bit different time then, and I remember being semi interested in that stuff, and then and going on and doing a human journey, and getting to a certain point where I'm going to skip through a lot of the middle part of that because we kind of touched on that in other things we've done. But I think in the beginning, when you're trying to get that, like you said, it is divine neutrality. But but the hardest part about that is if you're not, you only want to know what you want to know about. You're not neutral. That's the problem. You want to know. You also want to game the system and to figure out. That's when you talk about picking the different cards. Now, you can pick a zillion different cards, but normally you kind of get the gist. You kind of will pick the same ones. It's never the one you want. You always, you want to know about a relationship and you keep picking the death card and you're like, oh, damn, it's like, again, I always pick that card. That's always how that ends. But there is a part to it where that's how we have to connect because we have too much stuff in the way. The only way to connect is through external sources in the beginning, and that is why we find there's so much more than it used to be too. And maybe it was there then when I was in my 20s, but I just don't remember it being around, or I wasn't really looking for it, because I think some people just come in more open than others. They come in a different frequency. Yeah, all the kids come in open, and then they lull back to sleep, and then they go through their human journey and then decide what they're going to do after that. But I do feel like some people just stay more aware. Some people just are a little more connected in general than other people are. I don't know how much that matters once you go through your awakening and your ascension as to how connected you are. But I think in the beginning, we look for all this external stuff. We have to. I don't know how many people do pendulums, but pendulums are really kind of a fun thing. I'm going to show you with this. A fun thing to do that I remember doing. You could just do them in the crystal stores. You can use anything. But you don't have to buy a pendulum. I mean, you can use anything. And they would always say you had to calibrate it first, and you would say, okay, show me a yes. And then it would do this. And if I say, show me a no, most of the time these are the yeses and there's kind of get a pendulum that goes a different way, or then you would say show me it's the information is not available, it's not decided, then it will swing in a circle, right? Everyone would always say it was a parlor trick, you're moving it, and I'm like, no. Subconsciously maybe my fingers twitching it a little bit to give me an answer, but it's also just a good way to focus energy. And if you look at it as not so much about the answer but focusing and how much it can swing and how much you can make it swing. Because I could really get it to, in the beginning, I couldn't get it to go. Now I can get it to go like crazy, but it's kind of just a fun thing everybody can do, to just kind of start honing in a little bit and starting to focus. Pendulums, tarot cards, we reach out for all this stuff. And we get to this weird place where we're looking, but everything is kind of, it's like we're right at the answer, but you're not quite getting anything. It's like you're right there, but you don't know what the answer is. It's like a whisper, but you can't hear it. And we go through a lot of, and that's why we really reach out for the external, but it's almost from a very needy place. It's from a very lack place. And we just reach and reach and reach and reach and reach to try to get to something else. Because we just want to get to an answer. And we go through all this stuff. We might go to all these people, and where you go to mediums, you go to tarot card readers, you go to energy workers, you go to shamans, you go to get your Akash read. There's a zillion things we reach out for because we have to, because we don't have that connection within ourselves. The thing we kind of can get confused on is we think because people are connected, they're ascended. We think because people are connected, they are so amazingly conscious, they're never wrong. We think they know more than we do about everything. Do they know more? Can they see more than you can see? Maybe at some points they can. Some points in your ascension, they definitely can. But mostly that's just because they don't have the emotion around it. Just like if you have a friend that's got an issue and you can see clearly what's kind of going on and probably how it's going to happen in the timeline they're in, because you don't have the emotion around it either. We don't really even call that a superpower, but that's what that is. And you can see because you don't have the emotion. You're like, how come you can't see every red flag that's hitting you in the face? Well, when we're in that, we don't even see the red flags. We're just swatting them out of the way. We don't care. We're like, whatever. That's not a flag. That's just a miss. That's nothing. We don't even pay attention because we don't really even register it as that. So when we start out, we're going to start looking. We're going to start trying to connect to others, to get other people to connect for us. But people can also only connect as deep as they're connected. No one's going to read every Akash you have. You have lots of Akashas, okay? No one's going to be able to read your Akash, every Akash you have. That's bullshit. Anytime I see that, no one's going to be able to save you. Anytime I would see that, I'm like, save from what? I mean, it's just ridiculous. But in the beginning, we're looking for that because we're looking for anyone to help us along. What this stuff does, will get you to a point where you can start connecting on your own, and that is a game changer. But then there's a period that comes after we've connected on our own, and when we start to get our own messages, like license plates, used to be big for me. Messages on trucks was massive for me. Tarot cards, but I don't read them like other people read them. I mean, I'll kind of look at a tarot card and just look at what stands out at me on the card. I don't really care so much about what the card's supposed to be. That doesn't mean anything to me. But you start going about things differently because you get more interested in getting the information than looking for an answer. Once you stop looking for an answer, you're more open to getting information, and that information might not be what you're looking for, but it's still information you're getting, and you're not really in the beginning sure how you're getting it, or how do I know that? So I'm going to kick it back to you, but I'll let you play with some of those.
I just want to share as an aside that all day today I have felt like there are cobwebs on my nose and like on my eyes, like getting stuck in my eyelid all day. And like I feel like that's some kind of dimensional something. I don't know what membrane I'm going through. So I just want to say, hey, welcome to the weirdness. Welcome to the freak show. Um, so I love that you started with the external because I think that's the best. And that's really how it happens is it's an external sourcing. We don't yet know that we can do this within. And the words that were coming through is it's like you're building your connection, you're building your light quotient, or expanding your bandwidth to be able to receive the information inside. And I like to also phrase it as over time you start to receive information and you can kind of test it out, and then you start to build an inventory. And maybe this is also the light quotient, but of trust, in yourself, in your ability to receive the information. And I know for me, it was always easier to receive it for other people, very, very easy. And that's what would show me, like, oh my gosh, okay, so I have the emotional, or the attachment or whatever it is. Sorry, I still feel like I have webs. That was kind of clouding my ability to really clearly see. And then when different aspects start to come on for us, higher self aspects, that's when it becomes easier too, because usually the part of us that wants to know would be the human part, or these different parts that have less visibility or less ability to see. Um, and then where I am is okay, so all of a sudden it goes quiet, and you're like, I'm not hearing things the same. And then what I'm observing is a significant amount of work, and it shifts because you could be in a really high place and then you could have a frequency change, the energy changes, or you go to a different place physically too. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're back in your human, or you've somehow dropped a density. And so then you have to come back, and kind of build the frequency back. And how I like to phrase it is it's like you're strolling down the lane, hand in hand with your best friend. That's also your soul slash your higher self, slash you slash counsel, it's like all one in there, but and also, of course, you can feel the difference when our heart closes down versus when it's open. But that's, I think, one of the hardest parts along the way when you get deeper in is that you're used to hearing, receiving it like right away, and then it starts to get harder because your universe wants to level you up. They want to up the ante for you. And yeah, it starts to get kind of challenging. And one of the wonderful pieces that Annette brought up when we were discussing, like, oh, do you think this would be a great topic for this week? Was abandonment. All of a sudden, if you're used to receiving the information in certain ways, And then it just, there's really no notice. It just kind of stops. You're kind of like, where did it go? And for me, a really big piece on the awakening and then an aspect of the ascension was the feeling of being abandoned by source energy or abandoned by God or feeling separated from it and constantly feeling like, okay, you're there, you're home, and then boom, you got kicked out of the nest again. And it's like this interesting back and forth, like relay thing. But I would love to hear what you have to share on that, Annette, because I think that's a really big piece. And it's very timely with the energies right now, also, as we're getting into spring equinox and this renewal. Yeah, there is like a death rebirth kind of thing and abandonment, which, all these pieces. So I would love to hear you speak on that, on your view of that.
I have nothing to say. I'm going to abandon you right now and not say anything. I don't know. It's funny because we get to that. When we outsource, you gotta outsource consciousness, and that's what you were talking about. That's what I was talking about. We outsource, and we get to this place where your universe will not allow it anymore. And to me, it comes in different stages, and normally it happens in the worst possible moment because your human is really kicking and screaming. Things are probably in the shitter. Everything is going haywire, and you feel like you got dropped off by the bus, and there's no other bus coming, and you've already just kicked your human life to the curb. You've already gone too long down the path. You've either sold your house, you've had to sell your car, your money's gone. I mean, it happens in the worst possible moment. That's to me when you're listening and waiting, and there's crickets, and you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, how, why was this like a joke? Did I do all this, and now I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my god, I fucked up so bad. I can't believe I made that. I really did this. I can remember sitting in the floor of a house I used to own. It was a condo I used to own, and just sitting there and just believe at how everything had gone so out. Everything was so out of alignment. But back then I couldn't see it, and I was gonna have to sell the house because I couldn't afford it. And I just remember sitting there like, you got to be kidding. And I was getting nothing. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't because and every even external source I had was getting taken away. Because even if you're in groups or maybe you have a mentor you look up to, somewhere along the journey, I promise you they have to go. And they might just have to go for 7 months. They might have to go for a year. But somewhere along the way, they have to go because they can't stay, because you have to do it without them. And you might not have to do it forever without them. I know I was at a point where I was in a group and I was trying to get the card changed on how the payment processed. And the group is at a point where it was like, we're going to revamp the groups. If you don't pay this month, we'll throw you out. We're not throw you out, but we're going to purge the list. It was just everything happened in the right moment. And I was out of the group and I couldn't get back in for a while. And I was at the lowest possible point. My human was at the lowest possible point. And that to me is when a lot of that'll start, where you don't hear it anymore. You don't know what you're supposed to do. And some of it is you have so much stuff coming up, it's blocking. So I don't know now if I look back, is it so much I lost the connection or I had so much coming up at the time, it felt like it was gone. I had the connection still, but I didn't want to hear it. So I could have sat there forever and go, oh, I'm not getting anything. Oh, I'm getting it. I just don't like what I'm getting. I don't like the answer I'm getting. I had a friend the other day that she had quit her job a few years ago and, deep into her ascension process. And now she's training dogs at PetSmart. And she's like, who would have thought this is what I want to be? This was soul aligned and everything else I was doing wasn't. And that's how the journey is so backwards and upside down. And they don't really, you don't really know what's going on for a lot of it because we get so buried in our clearings that, like I said, looking back, I would probably say, yes, I felt abandoned, but I just didn't want to hear it. And it's almost like I ignored it for some stuff I knew I had to do and I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to align certain things because they meant too much to me. My identity was so much wrapped around them. I did not want to let them go. So I didn't want to have to let them go. I wanted to be able to continue. I really wanted to be able to continue going the way I was going. because I was having some breakthroughs as far as my power set was going. I could hear, I could see. And not like I can see now. I mean, now my vision, is way, way clearer. But I knew people back then that they could see everything external. Like where I would hear, there was people who would just see, a lot of external kind of stuff. And like, people walking around and stuff like that. So it just comes to a time where when we start looking and looking and looking, that whether you feel like you're abandoned or you are, really look at, is it you're not hearing or you don't want to hear? And there are times where the universe is getting you to connect deeper in. And that's the whole point of that. You have to go deeper in to reconnect, connect on a different level. I mean, or you might start to feel lonely again because that connection has gone away. But to me, loneliness is just I have to now connect deeper. I don't have a deep enough connection within myself. The connection I have now is no longer good enough for where I am. I have to go deeper in, and that's why I feel lonely. Because I do feel like there is part of this journey where you start to feel lonely when you feel like everything has been at the time you feel like it's been taken away, even though you've kind of punted it all away, you've given it all away, you've let it all go, or it was ripped out of your hands, but you couldn't keep it. No, I can't keep it, so I gotta let it go. We just get to these parts of our journey where our universe is asking us just to look within now. You cannot keep going. You cannot keep looking external. Or if you keep looking external, which I did that for a while, you're going to come up with, you'll start trusting in a lot of things people say coming true, and none of it comes true. Because you realize you're like, wow, I'm really trusting in people, and they don't know what the fuck's going. I can remember one person I was in a relationship with for a while, and I remember him saying, like, "Yeah, I really didn't know what I wanted or what was going on." I'm like, "Boy, I was really going blindly down this road. You have no idea what you were doing." Because we start doing that for a while because we're just looking for some external someone tell me what am I supposed to do. My universe is I don't know what's going on. So it is a very important part of the journey, and we just kind of have to ride through it and look deeper and deeper within to get that connection because it is still there, but it's going to come through a different way. The external stuff won't be as vibrant anymore. It won't be so much low hanging fruit, whereas you'll see people that are just starting the journey and they're getting answers right and left, and everything's going perfect, and everything they're doing is just working out. And you look at that and you're like, how come everything's working out? And I'm over here struggling and clawing, and everything you're doing is perfect. What's going on? But they're in a different part of the journey because if it doesn't go smoother in the beginning, you're not going to want to do it. You have to have some wins in the beginning. If you don't have a few wins in the beginning, you're not going to continue. It's kind of like your universe dangles a carrot for you to keep going down the road. If nothing is working from the time you start any type of spiritual journey, if you want to go down, I don't like that word, but if you're going to call it that, that's what a lot of people would call it in the beginning, any type of metaphysical journey, if you don't have any success, you're going to say, fuck that. And you're going to go to something else. You have to have some success in the beginning. Yeah, you have to have some things that start to work. Even if it's just the pendulum trick I showed you in the beginning. Something's got to you show you something, or you wouldn't keep going. Or you have to start to get a message that makes sense, or a message that you felt was just for you that day. If you don't get any of that stuff, and lives, we got to be open to it. And the humans aren't open to it. Humans get the same freaking messages. They just don't see them. It's almost like it's getting delivered in a different frequency. It's getting delivered in a different language. They don't understand it, but it's still getting delivered. So I'm gonna kick it back to you.
Oh yeah, so much of what you shared is so relatable. Like getting removed, from a community space and like basically being pushed, like forced in a way, even though our, universe sets it all up, but forced to be more internal, to source more deeply within. And I don't know, it can get challenging because it kind of feels like you're getting the same answer over and over again for extended periods of time. And so some advice that I would offer is like really getting into the art of asking the questions, and like the who, what, when, where, why, how, continuing to ask, and also asking for it to be delivered in different ways in case you're overlooking something. Because you know how it is, like the higher realm messages, it could be like a really short statement, but you're like, well, but what do you mean by that? Because that could go 100 ways. Like, you know, like one of the ones that I would get was just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? What I'm doing doesn't work. it's not working. It doesn't really seem to be working. It's, this is not sustainable. So then my next line of questioning is like, show me things that are more sustainable, or please assist me to see what either I can't see, or I'm having a hard time seeing, or I'm refusing to see. And then often going out in the world, you'll get a little something. Like I love when you talked about the messages on the cars, like on the vehicles, whether it's the license plates or like on the moving trucks and stuff like that. So one I've been seeing lately a lot of is compass, and it's a big compass, which I love. And then it's an like electrical engineering company, and it's something like shocking difference. It's very interesting. Yesterday, because the last few days I've been asking my universe. So I'll explain what happened on the eclipse last week. Is I had this visual experience of almost like going down a chute, like out of a tunnel, and it almost looked like when you have a real professional camera, the way that the aperture like closes on you, to close the to seal. And so I had this experience of kerplunk, but everything looks the same. And after almost a week going by, finally this week I was like, okay, everything looks the same, like nothing really seems to have changed. I can feel changes and shifts inside. I'm still choosing to shift inside, but still, I'm not really seeing like a whole lot of shift. And so the words yesterday morning were slow down and really take it all in, like really kind of like microscopic of the moment. And that was a really cool way to start to see just so much to be thankful for, just expanding the gratitude again. But I will say it gets really fucking hard as you get more deep, because your universe just doesn't care because it's you. It just doesn't care. Like, and so it's a lot to figure out. And then, so when I feel stuck, like currently I feel stuck, and I thank you for everyone here that is so lovely and positive. It's great to see you all. Thank you for being here with us. What assists me when it starts to feel really like, this is really starting to get uncomfortable. There's not enough movement for me. Is the astrology. That's when I go into the astrology every time. So it's like I'll be going through the process, going through the journey, and I'm like, well, let's see what's going on, and then it'll give a clue or a hint as to, oh, there's something like there's a planet, there's a wisdom teaching here to expand on something that I'm not seeing. That's what this moment is actually about. But it's challenging because we're in a multidimensional world. We still need fiat currency, unfortunately. So yeah, it's challenging. But I'm grateful for all the little messages that come. I call them like the flybys, when you're out and about, the symbolic languaging that's coming through in the world all around us, in the physical world all around us. But yeah, that's the most that I have to say about that, because I know I'm certainly in a crossroads. And I love when you shared about your identity, being wrapped around in something. And sometimes I'll observe like my consciousness will go to extremes, like, oh, well, do I just like burn the whole thing and walk away? So that's how another way that I will navigate when I'm trying to ascertain like what's the next move here, because this isn't working. So sometimes I will go to extremes in order to then get a read on what the answer is. Like, oh, do I just walk away completely from all of it? No, that's too extreme. No, that's not it. It's somewhere in the middle. Okay, it's more of a modification. Okay. So then like bringing in other things, trying in other things. But yeah, if that assists anybody out there, when it starts to get kind of challenging to determine like what's going on, um, if you're in a huge upgrade phase, also, like there's also that to take into consideration. Like, we are a combination of a receiver and a transmitter station. And then there's also the integration periods, right? Where you might be going through like a full DNA rewrite or something, and you're not even supposed to be trying to create realities right now or shift anything. It's just more about the being, or the embodying something. So you always want to try to feel into, well, first of all, where am I? What phase am I in? Is it appropriate to be in an active phase of trying to build something or shift or whatever, or what, as a starting point. But I would love to see what else you have to say. Thank you.
No, I think you hit on that's you want to burn it down because you got fire in your chart. That's why. I don't have any of that. We never burn anything down. I'm Earth. Pretty much mostly Earth. I don't some air, but we don't burn anything down. We stay with it till the very very end, man. We will just hang on till the very very end. Probably hang on way too long, but that's just what a lot of that's being really into that earthy energy. We kind of hang on way too long. You got to pry it out of our hands. One thing I will say is it took me a long time to understand that my universe didn't care about the same thing my human did. It's not that it didn't care. It didn't care about what my human cared about. It doesn't care about a marriage. It doesn't care about a marriage license. These are just examples I'm using. It doesn't care about your house. Okay. It doesn't care if you live in a mansion or if you live in a one bedroom apartment. It doesn't care. We care. Our human cares about that, but our soul doesn't care. Our soul cares if you have a roof over your head. Okay. Do you have a place to live? Do you need a 10,000 square foot house or a $40 million mansion? No. I can tell your universe is going to tell you don't need that. Your soul is going to say you don't need that. You might want that. You might have had that, but you don't need that. And it took me a long time to understand a lot of stuff that I wasn't getting was stuff I technically don't need. But until we realize what we need, what we really need, we don't get a lot of stuff. And that feels like abandonment a lot of times because we're not getting what we used to get. When we get to be more like kids. I want to have what I used to have, and I don't have that, and I'm pissed. I'm pissed that this journey is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm pissed that this is working out this way. I'm pissed that it didn't go down the way I thought it was going to. That's what we start to see. And that is what makes us feel like, it doesn't care. It doesn't care about us. I can remember when I was in some of my roughest points. I mean, you said you look to astrology. I would go back to tarot. Yeah, pull cards. If I was really stuck, that's when I knew I was stuck. I would start pulling cards because there'd be months I would never touch cards. Because you're just looking for anything, looking for any kind of assistance that it's okay, looking for anything to give you any kind of hint that this is going the way it's supposed to be going. Technically, it can't go wrong. It can only go longer because we hold on to it. Or we can identify with what's going on and want to keep it going, or see a timeline's ending, but we don't want to let it go. Most of the time, it's it's more that we just don't want to. We don't want things to end, even if we think we do. Everything looks better when it's walking out the door. The minute the reality starts ending, we're going to start grabbing for it, no matter how shitty that reality was, because we don't want to change. And like anyone can say, I don't care what astrology sign you are, you can say you love change and you flow with shit, fine. You flow with basic change. When your whole human life gets upended, ain't nobody okay with that. Okay. I don't care if you are the most flippant. Let me give you what's the twin sign? I can't even think about it now. Oh gosh. What is it? Tell me,
Gemini.
Marissa.
The Gemini.
Yeah. You can tell I never could get along with Geminis. Even in my human state, I can, and even in Ascendant, I very rarely ever attract Geminis. They're too flippy floppy, right? But even a Gemini couldn't deal with the amount of change Ascension wants you to deal with without bitching about it. Like I said, it's because it's change of your human existence. It's not just changing things within your human world. It's changing your entire template. It's no longer caring about the human stuff. It doesn't mean at some point you won't get this stuff back again, but you value it differently and you realize it's not super important because it doesn't matter. You don't have to have all this stuff, but because we had it as humans and other people have it, we don't know why we don't get it. And we get pissed about it. And we feel like, how come you get to go live your human life and I'm over here trying to live an ascended life and you have 100 things more than I do? But what always gets me is no one's ever happy. Our human conscience, none of us are happy. You can sit there and say you were happy, but if you really look back into any time in your human life, when were you truly happy? Maybe as a child, but then you're still semi-conscious. Of course, we're always looking for the next thing. We always want the next thing because we're looking for something else. And I mean, I don't care how much people have, and I've known people with millions of dollars. They're still not happy because it doesn't matter. Technically, that doesn't matter, and that's what the universe is going to want to show you time and time and time and time again that it does not matter. So I'm going to kick it back to you, and I will say, yeah, my birthday is May 13th, so I'm just a day after my May 12th pal in the chat there. But yeah, we are we are takes a long time to piss us off too. You know, we will roll with something. Tauruses will roll with it. I don't care how bad it gets. We will roll with it and roll with it. But the minute you push us just that inch too far, we have a breaking point that only a Taurus knows when you hit it. And then God help the person on the other end. And we will never, once we make a choice, we never go back on it. That's the one thing about a Taurus. And even in my ascendant journey, I probably am a little more, I do feel like our astrology signs get kind of cleaned up as we go through ascension, and we don't have the darker sides to the sign. That all the signs have the polarizing parts, but we don't really have the polarizing parts so much through as we go through so much of ascension. But we will get to that decision, and then that's it. It is done and it's gone off. Don't talk to me about it ever again. It is over. But all right.
I'm a Taurus too, so I'm so glad, Crazy Monk. That's awesome that you're a Taurus. We've got the Tauruses representing here. It's so nice. I'm an April Taurus though, April 25th. So only, 5 degrees in. And that's, thank God I have that tiny little bit of earth because everything else is fire. So I'm more like a magma Taurus. I don't know. I appreciate what you were sharing though, because that's one of the things is like I would say we're deconditioning the human condition, of what it means to whatever to have like, all these things. And so um that's the big piece that I appreciate is, well, what is the energy of whatever the thing is, that you have questions about, that you're wanting to connect about. And what I'm finding at these deeper stages is as soon as I feel like that tickle of joy in my heart, and feeling the alignment again of like, oh, yes, I'm in my happy zone again, I'm in my happy place or in my peace again within, that's that feeling again, like I described of like, okay, yeah, I'm strolling down the lane, with my best friend slash my soul, slash higher self aspect with me to tune in and receive information, So when you're in your happy place, the sparkly happy place, and I wanted to share a few things to get back to that because as you're going deeper, it's more challenging, particularly with the massive shifts that we're in now. It's exciting. We're getting ready for solar new year. Thank God. We're going to have some fire energy. Thank God. You know, but this whole year, just to like be really transparent for everyone on a cosmic scale, it's still more grunt work. It's still more cleanup crew. It's still more alignment. Like next year hopefully will be a break. So I think it's important to give some perspective of like, we always work our asses off and we're here, we're in it to win it, if you want to say all these kind of things, to stay motivated, but also have zero expectations, have zero attachments, and that's also challenging. So it's like, Buddha on Quaaludes, but also the Buddha is like a bull plowing the field and the field goes on into infinity. Like you just want to have some perspective, like we're in a long sum game. Or another way to say we're in a marathon, it's not a sprint. So hydrate accordingly, do your best. But I wanted to share some ideas of what works for me, to come back into that alignment. Let's say you're really going through some stuff. The big one, of course, is coming back into your love. But sometimes we're dealing with so much on our journey, whether we're going through illness, or feeling financially fucked, or whatever the thing is, where it's harder to stay neutral, it's harder to stay calm. Finding these little tricks, to come back into a state of neutrality and then starting to build your frequency back, right, from a stressed out place or an over cerebral place. So the big one, of course, you watch, we all get stuck in our heads. Like, okay, we'll descend from the head, come out of the head, into the body, into the heart, into this moment, using your senses, like, yeah, Colette says, coming back to peace. But let's say we're really having a tough time and it's been a really long time. So then there's kind of some energy, that's in this. kind of like in this bunch, we're in a pretzel in the mind kind of thing or whatever, is you can have a little cheat sheet here by using other tools. So things that make you happy. Just putting down the stuff that is not working. Don't focus on it at all. Let's start to reverse, reverse the energy, reverse the magnetics. What's easy to feel good about? It might just be as simple as watching the clouds go by. Animal videos. Like last night, I was really having fun watching these compilations of animal videos where the animals are doing all kinds of really hilarious, amazing things. And it's like, wow, and just laughing at like the most pure, beautiful, inspiring kind of little things. Going outside and doing random acts of kindness. So, sometimes like another thing I did yesterday morning, I went down to the water spot to get water, and universe was like, yeah, just go out of the house, go get some water. There's a symbolic act as well, of getting that water that's real water, not from a bottle, not from a processing plant, from Gaia herself. That's like a really kind of a very holy experience that's rare these days. And so I went, and there was a wonderful group of all these other souls, and it felt like a very kismet moment. And you're just present, you're just there with everyone, and you're appreciating, like, look at this gift. And it was so cool because we had a guy from Africa, we had a guy from the South, we had a guy that just moved here from the Midwest. It was like a whole cultural melting pot right there at the water source. And we were all just expressing our appreciation for this resource and like how rare and how precious that is. And then I was inviting them to envision, like, could you imagine if this was in every city, in every city and every town in America, that we just had like water gushing out of Gaia like this to drink, also like all over the whole world, So it's like getting out of ourselves and the immediate like moment and going and being with others, or doing random acts of kindness for others, or just getting outside in nature. Another great way is with the crystals and with the andaras, or with a prism if you have a sunny day. One thing that would really help me get out of my head if I was really twisted in a knot was taking a crystal or an andara and putting it in the sun and just looking at how the light is going through those fractals. And then you can actually start to work more with the subconscious mind, where all the shit is anyway, that's like causing the like not feeling great or whatever. And starting to almost like those Rorschach paintings, where you start to see, your subconscious mind starts to build impressions based on the patterns and the images that you're seeing in those kind of like light forms. So there's a lot of ways to get ourselves out of our head and like open up more, because once we can cross that threshold and open up, and get beyond the immediate intensity of whatever the thing is, then more information will come. And not only that, but we'll be in our peace first, and when you're in your peace again and you're in your happiness again and you feel your connection again and how wonderful that homecoming is, you kind of really don't even give a shit if you get the answer or not anymore. Because the whole point of wanting the answer at this point of the game was because you thought it was going to make you feel better. There was an energy that you perceive to be separated from, right? That's causing suffering, or the sensation of suffering. So it starts to get like really kind of hairy, but then not, it's like, yeah. So anyways, I'd love to pass it back to you, see what you have to throw in there.
I love what you said at the end there when you said it's really not the answer. It was the feeling you thought you'd get from the answer. It's really not about the thing. The thing never it matters. It's the feeling the thing was going to give you. If you got the answer that, oh, you could go here, or oh, you're going to go do this, or now you're going to go do this. And also, when you touched on, you know, it's no coincidence that when you hear people channel, um, and they'll channel something, something they haven't embodied, whether it's the galactic or it's a different part of them, and it's always kind of the same, like you're doing fine, you're great, very generic stuff. And you're like, wow, that's not really how. But even when we're getting that message ourselves, like keep going, you're doing great. And we're like, what does it feel like that? And that's very. Can we get more specific? Like, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do in the next 30 minutes? These really generic things. But the soul is so vast, and there's so many different aspects of our soul. it doesn't care about the mundane stuff. And it's just these are all little things that are, they know it's gonna work out because it always works out. And these are kind of these things that we forget about. It always works out. It's not something that we're going to get stuck in forever. Nothing is like that. And the more you even live your human existence, you start to learn that nothing is that bad. It's all we're always going to turn the page. And in Ascension, we learn quickly that timelines will end and there will be another one. And right about the time you understand why you're in the timeline, it normally will come to an end. And sometimes you can even see it coming to an end. But when we get so wrapped up in the next one, or we get so wrapped up in not being happy in the one we're in, and then we feel like we get trapped because we can't really feel the bigger picture anymore. There's a funny Saturday Night Live skit about alien abductions. And I don't know if you've seen it, but you've got to go watch it. It's so funny because there's two spectrums on here. There's one lady who gets abducted, and she goes through every alien probe and test, and she's trying to explain it. And it's really vulgar, so you have to kind of be in the mood for that. You have to kind of if that stuff offends you, it's probably not for you, but to leave that at the door and just watch it for that term. And then you get these other two people talking about how it was beautiful and they were just wrapped in love the minute they saw the aliens. The other lady's like, well, I got probed. They're just they're on these two completely different, these completely different experiences they're having. She said, well, this is really making me mad because nobody wrapped me in a blanket of love. And then, they just keep going on how great it was. And she's like, and then I got shoved out of the spaceship and I hit the ground. I didn't have clothes on. And they're like, and then I was laid back in bed and tucked in with love. And I felt peace and universal knowledge. And you're like, what the fuck? And I feel like Ascension is kind of, you feel like, well, at some point you're on her side and you're looking at everybody else on the other side because there's so many different phases. And there's some point where you're going to be feeling like you're being beaten to death. And there's other times where you feel like you're not. And it doesn't mean you're not doing the journey correctly or someone else is doing it better. It's just they're in a different part. They're in a different part of their journey. I would look at people who were in the fifth dimension and they felt so connected and everything was so great. And I'm over here trying to align my life. Half of it was falling down around me because it wasn't aligned. And I'm looking at these people and I'm like, you get jealous, you get agitated. Like, how come your journey's different? Well, it's not so much people's journeys are different. It's just they're in a different part of their journey. Fifth dimension, you haven't had to do anything yet. But if you, like, I think we said this in the beginning, but if you don't ever feel that love and that connection, you're not going to keep going. You have to spend time in the fifth dimension to feel that. If not, you're not going to want to keep going. But then you have to align your life. And that's a lot different than just experiencing the fifth dimension. Now we have to start embodying that and aligning our life. Well, here's a newsflash. Your human life is not aligned. So if you have anything consistently that looks similar to your human existence, it's probably going to go at some point in your ascension journey because it's not aligned. None of it is aligned. I don't know anyone yet maybe they come through with their partners on the other side if they were married when they started or, with a person. Some of that comes through. But a lot of the other stuff, it's going to all change. And when we're in these tight moments and we don't even feel that we have that connection anymore, sometimes I think you hit on some of the big ones, even just going outside or just going to help somebody else. Because it's really not that tragic, even though at the time it feels tragic. It feels tragic for our human. It feels tragic that our life is, we threw away our whole human life. We feel like we don't know why. But if we really look back at it, was it that awesome? Because I can guarantee you, if it was that awesome, you wouldn't have been looking for something else. The people who aren't going through awakening and ascension because they still think their human life is awesome. They're still happy. It still works for them. Everyone who's listening to this or will listen to this is because it doesn't work for you anymore. If not, you're not going to leave. No one's going to leave the party who's having a great time. But when the party is over and you've had your time at the party and either you're just bored with the party or it's just now the party is, the building is caught on fire and you're trying to get out, that's the only way you're going to leave. And if it's awesome, you're going to stay. So when you start seeing people still in your human existence, it's not so much as so awesome. It's just we just don't know how disconnected it is when we're in it. But when we were in it, we didn't know that either. So it's really fun to look at the two different. There's so many different sides to it, and so many different places where one day you'll feel okay, and the next day you won't. And one day you're going to be okay with the timeline you're in, the next day you're not. You're going to get fed up with it. You're going to want a different one. But why? Why do we want a different one? It's just like quitting your job in your human existence, quitting your job when you're pissed off at your boss. Well, you're not really solving anything. You're just going to now go on and you're going to now go on and go do something else. You're going to go through it again because you can't really face it. What's making you uncomfortable? Is it that you just don't like your boss? You don't know how to deal with that? Nothing that ends like that is really ending. You're just going to go do it somewhere else. You're going to just play it again somewhere else. But when we're not really connected, we can't see that. So we can get mad at our universe and feel abandoned by our universe. Maybe we don't want to talk to our universe for a while because we feel like we've been royally fucked. But our human feels that way. It's really not that bad. But if you look back in your human life, it was really miserable. We like I said, everything looks better when it's leaving. We will come back and think how great it was. But I'm like, boy, anyone who's living from a human existence, are they really happy? Nobody is. Like they just don't realize it yet. It hasn't all gone tits up yet. And when it does, that's when they will start the exodus. When you really look at how messed up it is, you can look at the collectives now and see how messed up it is. You have half the collectives pissed off about certain things, and others saying, "Well, that's okay, but is it okay? But is this side right? Or it doesn't matter. It's all just everyone's fighting amongst themselves, and none of it works." And that's just what our human creates. Our human does not create anything that works. It just creates stuff to make us feel better. The human cares about one thing. It cares about itself. And if you want to convince yourself that your human cares about anybody else, we're just lying to ourselves. Our human watches one back, and that's its own back. And that's it. If you're in a relationship with someone who's in a human consciousness all the time, and that's their home frequency, that's what's going on. And if you're living with people from a human consciousness, that's what's going on. It's not that they're awful people. They're just in a consciousness that is unconscious. And that's it. It's not personal. They just don't know any better. Neither did we. We didn't do anything great as humans. Even if we try to do something great as humans, usually because we wanted something out of it. We get pissed off at our soul because our soul won't really let us have the agenda. And every time we say we don't have an agenda, we always have an agenda. Even through Ascension, a lot of times we'll still have an agenda. But we don't want to admit we have an agenda. We want to convince ourselves we don't have an agenda. And then we don't get what we want. We go, I didn't get what I wanted. And now my universe, now my universe has let me down. Or now I don't believe in it anymore. Or I don't. It's like a child that, I have a nephew that lost a tooth. And he wrote, it wasn't even a tooth. He lost a spacer. And I was like, well, let's write a letter to Tooth Fairy. Maybe we can get something for the spacer. We're gonna roll the dice and see. We're gonna see. So he wrote the letter, and I read it, and I was like, honey, you're asking for a Cybertruck. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, a Cybertruck is like $100,000. This is the yeah, but the Tooth Fairy can get it up here. And I was like, you're 9, right? At this point, you're 8. You literally don't drive. You don't even need a Cybertruck. And he's like, well, you can drive it. Well, I don't want a Cybertruck. I have a vehicle. I don't need a Cybertruck. But it's such that little ego human consciousness about what they asked for. And I will tell you, that child was so disappointed that the Tooth Fairy did not lug a Cybertruck onto the driveway the next day. He was almost devastated. And I was like, are you kidding me? But that's how our human acts, even when we get older. We act like, we always tell kids to share, right? Well, humans don't share. Adults don't share. We get pissed because the kid doesn't want to share his toy. Well, that's his. We don't want to share our house when we're in our human consciousness. We think there's no difference to a child who has a toy. That's theirs. We just have bigger things we don't want to share either. But we don't look at it the same way a kid looks at it, even though that's how they're looking at it. But that's mine. Well, the house is yours too. Well, I don't want to share that. Well, this is different because it costs $5. The house costs $500,000 or whatever. It's no difference. It's just our mentality around it. And it's how we get so wrapped up. And that to me is a lot of times when we feel like our universe is not there, because our value system gets so skewed. It gets just so skewed and so just the amount of things I remember stressing over and wanting so bad. And yeah, we're bigger things. There are things that are super serious when we're in it, like what are we going to live? And there are those moments, and I don't want to downplay those moments because I've been through those moments, and they do come. And trying to find situations that are aligned to live in, and they are very real. And food and all that kind of stuff, and having a car, having a vehicle. These are all big things that Ascension will test you with, because these are things that get to us, right? These are the things that get us. Health gets us, a place to live. Those basic things you have to trust. And even if you can't hear, I promise you, your universe won't leave you. I promise. Even if your universe gives you $1 to go get oatmeal so you can live one more day, and then someone will break the next morning, which I've been in a lot of situations like that, it will not leave you. It's just not going to give you that Cybertruck, because we really don't need the Cybertruck. You know what I'm saying? We don't really need it, but we feel like we need it because we want it. But that's just how our human works. So really look at what are you not getting the information on? What are you not getting the answer for? What is it? And I think you said it beautifully. And I'm going to kick it back to you. It's not really the answer that matters. Just like closure. Nobody really wants closure on shit you don't care about. You're not sitting over there and go, I really want closure on my third grade teacher who gave me that B minus on that book report. You don't give a fuck about it. Okay. You only care about closure on stuff that didn't close the way you wanted to. That's it. You know, closure is not a thing anybody cares about when it's something they don't care about. That's just a big focus when it's something they care about, because they don't like the ending. They don't like how it's happening. That's more closure. I don't like what's going on. I want a different outcome, and I think a lot of Ascension, we feel abandoned. We want a different outcome. We don't like the fact that we got a sand sifter from the Tooth Fairy for the beach when I wanted a Cybertruck, and I just don't, I'm not happy with it. So, all right, I'm going to kick it back to you.
That was great. Thank you so much. And we have some really great comments here. I just want to thank you all for being here with us. Before I go into the segue into the next topic here. And you know what's kind of fun with your wonderful example about him getting a sand digger instead of the Cybertruck? Well, the way universe works, you take that sand digger out, he finds a diamond ring or something, you go pawn that in, you never know. So anyways, it's just fun how our perspective will evaluate something, and throw a fit about it.
I'll let you explain that to him, Marissa, because it was very disappointing when that Cybertruck, he was running outside of the driveway. I'm like, you are not serious about a Cybertruck at your age. It's just no way. It's so human. It's so funny to watch children when they're in that human ego, and we're laughing. We're like, that's totally how the human is. I mean, that's just the rawest form.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love his sense of value. However, he knows he's priceless because the value of the tooth for him is, that's an equitable trade. And I think that's really sweet. So Crazy Monk had a great point, and he is helping us to segue into this next piece, which is when it comes to our connection with our guidance. And we start to realize, oh, it's this best friend that's always been there, almost, like my universe, whatever you want to use for calling this, your inner being. Lately, I've been liking inner being. I've been pissed at my universe. So I haven't really been saying universe much, A lot of the conversations Annette was sharing right now, like, were some of the ones I've been having. I've been having some very stern, profane laced conversations with my universe because it feels like so long with certain things, So I like inner being right now. That assists me right now because I immediately feel this beautiful core, this connection of this core inside. And so our brother here says, he talks about the Ananda that is always here. There's a happiness that's always here, even with suffering. And that's part of our multidimensionality. And that's what I've been sharing with some sisters that have been supporting me through these really intense times. We talk every day and share where we are. And what is amazing to marvel at now is that you're still in your center. You might be pissed, you might not like something, you might be observing your human, and you're feeling the human response to something, and you might have a bitch session. And yet, you're not separate from your inner being or your universe or your higher self. There is still this presence that is very calming, it's very stabilized. It's kind of like the parent, watching the toddler have a tantrum before bed because they know the child is tired, right? Very interesting. And there's this calmness, there's a surety there with that energy that is always present. And so then we come in, come back to that. And that's really cool. And when you were talking about the home, the car, food, all of that, like that's what I've been going through for like 4 years now. And what's interesting is more recently, instead of deviating, or leaving my center, being so pissed, like, oh my gosh, I'm here again, I can see that these are the tests, not to leave center and to stay. What makes it challenging is if you're not getting an immediate goodie, immediate cookie, gold star for passing the test. So it gets so interesting the deeper you go, the tests, because even if it feels like a similar theme, it's this like gouging out of the subconscious of that old stuff where we did still within the DNA, within the body, our organs, even, where we still had beliefs or feelings of separation. And so some of them it's like holding out, and there's really nothing you can do other than be present and just ride it through and just know, like stick to the facts, like what Annette said. Even if you just get $1 today, you know, you're going to be able to get your oatmeal. And sometimes we do have to go through those, and it really sucks. It's not glamorous. It's not fun. But if I can do it, anyone can do it. And that's why I think this show is really important, is to assist people. That's why we call it Ascension in the Raw, because it can be gnarly sometimes. And just know it's part of the process, because we are continuing to deepen our, like I said, the deconditioning, we're dehumanizing, right? So that we can observe more of what the actual truth is that we're always connected. And that's the biggest lie when we feel disconnected. And it's only because we have kind of spun out, if you imagine this little like mental and emotional tornado where we've spun out of center, right? And if we're not aligned with center, you're going to get, just kind of like spit out of it, because you're all of a sudden you've dropped frequency. So then we start to look at it more as a science of frequency, of energy, instead of personal, right? So then it becomes easier to come back to center. But what I've been observing is I've been in this process since at least August of last year, which is aligning your reality. But first, before that, reversing. And that's the process I'm going through, is reversing anywhere where I didn't appreciate something, right? Or I took it for granted, or had separation or self confidence or self value kind of stuff. And this is very relevant right now as we're going through all these Venus upgrades and rewrites of our sense of value, right? Where our value is not placed on a material something, something that's externalized. So we're deconditioning, the human experience of the material world, and really deepening our understanding of the energetic world, where everything is soul energy, soul currency, if you want to say, it's beyond currency, of course. So just know that some of these processes can be really long. And yeah, it's like you miss the days where all you had to do was do the right thing and you got whatever, you got a client or a goodie somehow. It hasn't happened like that in a long time. And it's an interesting phase of this, like, oh, you're coming into this, like, this ancient part of yourself that has to just be so, it's really a deepening of, you imagine, like, the monks in the mountains, and they have like, they're wearing like a string, and they eat like 3 beans a day or whatever, whatever it is, because it's part of that renunciation process, of like letting go, and nothing will define you, nothing will defile you, nothing will knock you off center anymore. So yeah, I just want to share that, because it's important to understand that even if you're going through the deepest of these, there's a process you can read about in the yogic background, and it's called tapas. And it's a part of our spiritual conditioning, or almost a form of a spiritual boot camp, a soul level boot camp. And the teaching is that it's like imagining yourself and your consciousness like a rag, and that rag is being washed in the river. And the way they used to do laundry back in the day was at the river, right? And they would, like, beat the rag onto the stones at the river to soften the fabric. So it's tapas, and it's about a softening and opening. There's a purification going on, a cleansing going on, and you just do your best to just stay the hell out of your own way. But it's easier said than done when you're like clearing programming at the same time. So you're like holding the awareness of what's going on while programs are coming up and out. So it's a rigorous process. You imagine yourself like as a towel being beaten against the rocks, and then hung out to dry. And then we repeat it again. So we are, many of us, in these phases of these deeper, aspects of training. And not only are you going through this internally and doing your damnedest to hold on to your connection, but you're also showing up because you have to. It's this why we came, is to show up and to be here together. So that's why I'm so thankful that we're here together, and I'm so thankful to Annette. Um, and the process takes however long as it has to take, but to like start to wrap this up, it's important to realize that feeling disconnected, it's just an illusion. You're always connected. And all you have to do is just remember that, however long it takes to come back to that, when we spiral out for a moment and you come back and you're like, oh, you're always here. And the presence is like, yes, I'm always here with you. So we do have this incredible, like, cosmic, timeless best friend that is our higher self, that is always here with us. And you just have to be able to open again and remember and come home to that inside, you know. Yeah. So, and thank you. May the force be with you. Thank you so much, Crazy Monk. I appreciate you. And Colette, thank you. And Claire and everyone here, we appreciate you. And I'll give it back to you, Annette, and we can wrap up.
Yeah, I think I was in that place for years too. So I don't think you're the only one that's been in that place for years. Like years. We sat in these places for a long time. And I remember it was a big self-loathing clearing for me during a lot of that, a lot of anger. Because it's like sometimes you feel like we just need necessities. It's not even like we're asking for the Cybertruck in the front yard tomorrow. But there was a part of me that started to understand that one of it's the eye of the needle. All this stuff has to drop before you can get to the other side. Some people call it a portal, some people call it the eye of the needle. It's however you want to really picture it. But you remember that you mentioned a little while, like, it's not as easy. Like, I do this one thing and I got a carrot, I got a reward. I do this and then a client would show up, or I do this and I mean, this would happen immediately because you had to have it in a sense, like you had to see it happening. If nothing happened back then, you wouldn't have kept going. You'd have gone a different journey. You needed that reassurance. Now your universe knows you don't really need the reassurance. And the only way to get to the deeper program is to put you through the rough stuff because the other stuff doesn't bother you anymore. The little things don't bother you. Well, it might not even be a little thing, but it doesn't bother you. It's got to get to the really hardcore shit to now clear what's left because it's not going to get to it through any other way. Little things don't get you anymore. So we all get to that point where we feel like, oh my God, this is so hard. And I mean, we sat in it for years. And if you have been in it for years, girl, we were all in it for years. Okay. It is not a 1 month, oh, I'm out. I thought I would have a reprieve here and there. I would go through it for like 2 weeks, really rough, really bad. And then I get a reprieve for like a month. And then I'd be back in it really bad again. That's how it worked for me. I did it was kind of like when you described it beautifully about a toddler screaming and just needing to go to sleep. I kind of felt like those reprieves were just my universe saying, okay, go to sleep now, rest, just relax, get your vibration, recover a little bit. Usually it was over money. Here's some money to go for another 2 or 3 weeks, and then here we are again. And you know how many times I said, fuck, here we are again. Many, 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 many times. Years, here we are again. Here we are again. Here we are again. And sometimes it was me trying to hold on to something that was starting to get not aligned. because it's weird because support comes for stuff for a while, and then when it's no longer aligned, support will withdraw. So there's also a phase like that when we really got to look at it. Is support not coming anymore because it's a test and I've got to just get through it? Support will be there, or support not coming anymore as in the way of funding, whether it be money or whatever is going to support the reality, because it's not aligned anymore. And support is being redirected to something else I'm supposed to go do. And that one you kind of got to feel out, when you're in those moments, is it not aligned anymore? Is this not aligned for me to do this anymore? Or do I need to shift to something else? Or is this just me getting through it? Because this is all the only thing that's going to get to me now is to being threatened with starvation or whatever it is. It sounds melodramatic, but there are times when you feel like that. Like, are you serious? Are you kidding right now? And that's kind of what has to happen, because if not, um, you don't really appreciate the little stuff. You don't really understand the little stuff. And it's funny, I saw that comment that just popped up, and it's funny because a lot of people will look, they go to the angel and demon on your shoulder, and it's our human consciousness, and the human consciousness really isn't a demon, but it's very self-absorbed, you know. And the angel on her shoulder, like, oh yeah, you're fine. I'm like, does this look fine? You look around like, really? Is this fine? Does this look okay? This looks like a shit show. This does not look fine. But our definition of fine changes. Now I am in a different place now than I was for years. It's still not the place, it's still maybe, I'd even say it different. Yeah, I'm probably in about the same place, but I'm in a different frequency experiencing it. You know what I mean? So am I experiencing some of the same stuff? Yes. Do I have different levels of support? Yes. Is it coming the way I want it to come? No. But I'm experiencing the same thing in a much different frequency with a lot of that programming gone, and really nothing bothers me. I'm gonna say nothing bothers me, and this stuff is gonna bother me, but the majority of things now that used to really upset me, they don't bother you anymore. Because once you've been through some of the stuff that Marissa's gone through, that I've gone through, people are going through now, it is super humbling. It is super, it gets you, it's almost that, it's like it sobers you up quick in a sense from your it sobers you quick when you look at all the stuff you used to waste, how much gets wasted, how much we never appreciated. And a lot of times you just can't go without this stuff for 20 minutes and then go, oh yeah, it's like taking a toy away from a kid for 20 minutes and seeing if they'll appreciate it. They don't appreciate it after getting gone for 20 minutes. Maybe if it's gone for 2 years, or it's gone for, then maybe they'll appreciate it, but they don't care about 20 minutes. 20 minutes is nothing to them. To our soul, that's nothing. So these experiences are meant to last a while. And it's not so much a universe has left you or abandoned you. It's just you have to go through this part of it. And I don't know another way I would have gotten to where I am now if I hadn't gone through it. But when I was in it, it is rough. And I it's one thing I wouldn't wish it on anybody. That's why Marissa and I get on and talk about stuff, because there are ways I could have shifted some of it. I could go back and see. Would I have ended up in the same place? Yeah. Would it have been as rough of a ride? No, because Marissa explained it earlier, and then I'm going to kick it back to you, Marissa, to close it out. It's kind of like having, a friend beside you, walking with you and blah, blah, blah. But if you think about it, it's a friend that you never listen to, that keeps trying to give you advice, or keeps trying to tell you what you should do to help with this journey, and you don't listen. Well, eventually that friend's like, F you, I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm going to sit right here and just watch you crash and burn. Because you don't listen to them. It's like when someone calls and you don't pick up the phone, and all of a sudden they stop calling. I mean, technically they're still there, but they're just a little agitated. And they're like, all right, you can go on your own then. You see how you do on your own. Then we're like, oh, are you still there? Well, hello, where did you go? I'm like, why? You didn't listen. You didn't listen anyway. How many times have you seen people that are in their human consciousness that you just don't, they're not listening, and you can see it. You can see where their reality is about to spin out. And even if they ask your opinion, and you give them how you feel it or see it because they asked, and they still don't care. It's like it just doesn't matter. Eventually, you stop giving advice even if they ask for it, because no one's listening. So, all right. I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody and thank everyone for joining. And I'm gonna kick it back to Marissa.
I think I just had the idea for next week, which might be cool if you see how you feel about it with this, with aspects coming in. Because what has been very interesting through this experience, of years of really deep stripping away of more core belief systems, more core programming that was so deeply woven, right? So you have to get to this like stripping bare, in order to have it even come up for you to see it rising deep out of the subconscious. And what's been really cool, the gifts that do come through this are these aspects that come forth. And so, what's been really interesting this year started November of last year and been happening periodically are these. I was calling them like a walk in experience, but it's aspects. But it does feel like all of a sudden, boom, they come in and but they've always been there. It's like they drip in pieces. And so, what's been fascinating lately are these activations inside of rememberings of these divine masculine God consciousness aspects. And so the other day, I'm like, why are you give me the most? I'm bitching at my universe again because this has been a routine thing now. I'm either saying, oh, thank you for reminding me to do this or do that, and then or fuck you, or like, why, what do I do with this? So it was, what do I do with this? Like, you're gifting me these amazing consciousnesses, with increased sense of power, but it supersedes the material world power, right? So it's like you don't really, it's almost like an interim. Like you're aware of what's possible, but it's not yet, happening. The other pieces aren't that, so you get these little pieces dribbling in. And so I'm like, why are you giving me all of this? Like, this is awesome. And I'm very grateful, but I don't know what to do with it. And it just, and I'll have arguments. I'll say, we're here on earth in the physical experience, having a human experience through all of this. And you're gifting me these things and it's really great. And I'm grateful. But what about this? What about groceries this week? So those are the kind of conversations I'm having. So I just want to share with people how interesting it is having these multidimensional experiences. And maybe that's something for next week for fun, is to talk about different aspects and like what was happening, and how they started to come in. And so I guess I always want to end us on a positive note that yes, we share a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of magic that happens with this too. It's the whole mixed bag, and so you're remembering and you're having these experiences of these aspects coming forth, and you can feel how powerful they are in a very beautiful and pure way, and how capable. And so that's what happens when we strip away, the victim stuff. Then you get these like superhero downloads, but they're not really coming from outside. They were already there. It's almost like now there's this whole new set of like hardware that we couldn't get to before. And so it will be exciting to see how it all unfolds. But I just wanted to share that with everybody, is that that's the whole point of this, is that we're stripping away, we're simplifying what all of this means, what our connection is. And then we start to realize, like, holy shit, like every part of me is connected. Like you think about like the mycelium in the earth, the crystal grid networks, right? And so we can forget all of that in a moment when we're going through an inconvenience or something that's really challenging or something that purposely takes you off. But that's what's really fascinating at the end of it all, is that the evolution of the connection, and that's what I've been trying to say, is like we start to realize it's always been us the whole time. And just like Annette said, like, well, are we good at listening? Not, maybe not always, but we're getting better, right? But it's always been with us, and there's new ways to forge or to strengthen that connection. And so the best one, the most simple one, it doesn't cost anything, is to go outside and use your senses of perception as portals, and ask to be shown, ask to connect, ask to feel. And this will assist you if you're in a moment of whatever that's really challenging you, because we're getting ready for solar new year and Easter energy, Ostara energy. It's a lot of big consciousnesses coming forth. So allow them to come forth. Do your best to get out of the way, and do your best not to hang on to the old stuff, the old stories. Don't let your anger burn you. Feel it, let it move on. And then what else is there, you know? And I'll end with that you are the connection. And you did you want to say anything else, Annette?
Maybe one thing, and it kind of piggybacks on what you're saying. Our human experience, once we get through certain parts of ascension, it is over. You're now in an extended experience. The human experience is done. And I think some of it gets rough for us because we want to tittle tattle into both. We want to have a human experience, but we want to have an ascended life, and we can't have both. Like my human experience is over. I don't live a human life. It's done. And sometimes I look at people living it and go, wow, maybe I wish I'd had more fun when I was in it, or maybe I wish I'd done something different. Not really, but whatever. Sometimes I said, it looks better when we're walking away from it. And now, but that's not what I live. That's not the choices I made. That's not the agreements I had when I came here. I don't live a human life. My human experience is over. And now I'm in an ascended experience. And yes, it is magic. But when you're in parts like I have been in, and you have been in, or maybe currently in, it doesn't feel like that. And it is rough. So when you're trying to find the magic, and that's going for anybody out there that's in these experiences in these types of clearings, and you can't find the magic, that's okay. That's okay. Because you can be bitchy and pissed off. Who wouldn't be? But I will tell you, and then I'm going to kick back to you to do the final sign off. Every time I get through one of these, and something would break, and it always breaks. I will say that 100 times. It will always break. It might not break the way you want it to. It might not break as much money as you want it to, if it's money or if it's whatever it is, or if it's a place to live, whatever. It'll break. It'll always break. The energy will always break. You'll get through it. You'll hold on long enough, and it'll break, and something will come through. It might just be a pittance, but something will come through. I would feel like a freaking hero.
Yes.
I was freaking Wonder Woman, Captain America, because I got through it, and it is hard. And I got through it, and I could look at so many people who would have given up, and they wouldn't have been able to go as far as I would go with it. And I would go down to the last moment. I mean, I would be like, no, universe, I'm not giving in. I'm going to the last moment. You better bring me something. I don't care if it's $4 refund or from something that was supposed to be refunded 3 months ago, and now I can go get oatmeal and I can get breakfast. It sounds crazy, but we get to these points and go to these points because we have to push through. You have to push through, and you will. I promise it breaks. Promise. No, it doesn't feel like it. But when you get to the other side, you feel like a hero. That's the magical part. You're like, yeah, man, I did it. Yeah, I got through it. And then you get disappointed when it happens again. But that's just the cycle of it until you break all of it. Now you're just in a different layer of it. So, all right, I'm gonna let you sign off. But you made some good points. I just wanted.
Thank you so much, Annette. Yeah, so just remember, everybody, you will get through it. And I forgot to say that Annette has amazing oracle cards where it's all ascension phrasing. So it's very simple. I love it. It's a very blunt answer to assist you to be really clear, which is nice because that can help us. Mhm. And let's see what else. Well, yeah, we'll play around and see if we want to talk about aspects next week. Also, if you have any topics that you would like us to go into, please, leave comments, on the replay, and have a wonderful one. And we'll see you next week. We'll see you for the eclipse. And just thank you all so much for joining us. This is a beautiful community that we have, and we're very blessed to be together. And Annette was talking, and I'm sure I'm going to look funny on the replay because I'm like looking out the window and I'm like, whoa, because the reason being, because as she's talking, there's the trees were just whipping. So it's like this wind being and this gale of wind. And that felt very aligned with what she was talking about. So Gaia is chiming in. So, anyways, so yeah, thank you so much, Annette. And thank you, everyone. Yeah. And we'll see you soon. You take good care.